Welcome to Maven Cast, deep dive conversations with industry experts designed to move your business, technology, and thinking forward.
Welcome everyone to Maven Cast. My name is Stephen Perva, and I'm your host for this episode as part of our series exploring some of the mainframe industry's most critical topics through the lens of a few of Ensono's IBM champions. I'm an expert mainframe innovation engineer at Ensono, IBM champion since 2022, and resident mainframe enthusiast. I've spent my entire professional career focusing on what's making the mainframe platform more integrated, exciting, and cutting edge. As part of that focus, I've been a vocal advocate for the latest technological, cultural, and business advancements going on in the mainframe space. My advocacy has earned me speaking slots at most major industry conferences worldwide, as well as 4 consecutive years as an IBM champion. Most recently, I wrote an article on mainframe modernization, what it is, what it isn't, in issue 9 of the Maven Report titled Two Truths and a Lie About Mainframe Modernization. I'm extremely proud to introduce as our first guest in this series a fellow technologist, mainframe enthusiast, and IBM champion, Caroline Whitaker. Caroline, thanks for joining us and welcome to Maven Cast.
Thanks for having me.
Super grateful for having you. So I gave it my best shot to keep the intro for you as brief as possible because I knew that I would probably get it wrong. So for people listening or watching, can you give us a brief rundown of who you are and what you do today?
I am a second-year IBM champion. I have been at Ensono for coming on 9 years now. I am a senior capacity planner on the mainframe side.
So you're like the real actual hands to keys person in the practice doing the real work,
down
right?
in the trenches.
Exactly. So a big component of this series that we're doing is highlighting what it means to be part of the IBM Champions program. And since you're our first guest, you have the unfortunate responsibility of trying to give us a rundown of what the Champions program is and what it takes to be a champion. Would you be willing to do that for us?
So the IBM champions, they focus a lot around advocacy for their respective fields. I'm in the mainframe world. I know Steven's in the mainframe world. So what we do is we go out and we present the mainframe to a broader audience than usually it gets. So we try to bring forth the fact that we're still around, basically, to get the word out there, to get people excited about it, to get people back into it, and to be willing to make changes to move into the future with it.
Absolutely. So a big piece of the program is about the advocacy that you were just talking about. So what's your favorite form of advocacy? What does that look like for you personally? What are you getting out there and doing?
I think my favorite is going to the conferences, especially the ones that have students there, because I did not have any mainframe at all in school. And so seeing that that students are now bringing that back, and I get to talk to them and they get to see us as a person instead of just a photo, it feels more connected, like a better connection between people.
Absolutely. And I was hoping that you were going to say podcasting, like showing up on podcasts, talking to people.
This is my first one, so
No, well, we have the absolute honor and privilege of having you. So thank you so much for that. So yeah, the getting out there, talking to people is really what the Champions program is about. And is that how you got into the program, was really just kind of starting that foot? I know I attended a couple of talks that you had done at conferences about your career journey, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. But that's how you get into the program, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It started with attending conferences as a newbie to the space and continuing on and just deciding to make the choice to do more than just the everyday what's expected of your job, to get out there and make additional movements.
Exactly. So you glanced on a topic that I really think is kind of the crux of what we're going to talk about today. So I kicked off the session today between you and I, selfishly plugging my own article, my active advocacy on this idea of mainframe modernization. But I think that you and I both know that being aware of what mainframe modernization is and what it might mean is hardly anything more than just a good starting point, right? Modernization, innovation, integration are impossible achievements without top shelf technologists like yourself that are actually out there doing, like you said, being in the trenches, doing the important work. And you and other people like you are the ones that are actually driving forward all of that momentum that we're seeing in the industry today. But the idea of mainframes as a career path in today's AI focused landscape really seems far away from what you would expect, say, like a new generation person coming into a IT career to gravitate towards. So you mentioned that when you were kind of entering into these conferences, that you were kind of someone who was a newbie in it all. So what actually drew you into the mainframe space? How did you land on this island, and why is that? How's that been going for you?
So I feel like quite a few people, the generation coming in, they kind of end up in it like I just kind of fell into it. I, going into school, wanted to do something completely different. I then moved over to mathematics, and I was always told growing up that the only thing you can do with math is teach, and I wasn't going to do that. So I switched over to computer science, and one day I was just skipping down the hall to my class, and there was a flyer that said internship. So I applied, and that was coming up on 9 years ago. And so I've been here since. I came in, I enjoyed it, I decided to stay, and here we are.
So we've kind of ensnared you with something that seems a little bit exciting, right? Thankfully, math kind of didn't show up to the table with something compelling enough to keep you there. So you've been in the industry long enough. You're going to forgive me. I forget how many years you said that you've been into it, and remind me here in a second. But I'm guessing that how long you've been doing this, you've constantly hear this notion of a mainframe skills gap. What does that mean? You've likely heard of that, but is it real? And like, how serious is that challenge like facing the industry today?
The skills gap that we're seeing is definitely real, and it's definitely an issue. Back in the day, I remember talking to my dad, and he graduated in the 70s, and he was telling me about how he learned COBOL in school. And so that used to be commonplace. You'd go into higher education, and it was a track you could do. Not necessarily a track, but a career path that was out there for you. It is not anymore at all. When I first started here, the only real references I had of mainframes were that they're in Fallout and you hack them, and in movies you hack them, and that was about it. So coming into it, I basically came in with a clean slate, and I came in to be mentored by these people that have been doing it for 40 years, that they've been doing it since, they've kind of come up with it. And so now they're at the end of their career, but because people have been saying for 40 years that the mainframe is going to die, they phased it out of schools. And the problem with that is now that the workforce is aging out, there is a huge gap between them and the youngins. I'm the youngest one on my team at 31, and there's just a gap in what they know and the things that we know, because we're coming in with nothing. The people that have been around for a long time, they kind of, like I said, they kind of came up with it. So I had a coworker a couple years ago, and we ran into a problem. I don't remember what it was, but he was showing me how to fix it. And it was a thing where we went to the problem, and he just knew that, well, the reason this was happening was because in the beginning it was like this, and then they had to change it to this, and then they had to move to this. And so they knew the steps. And so I came into it just at the end going, well, how am I supposed to know that? So I feel like that also contributes to the gap, where they have all this knowledge. It's stored in their heads. It's not anywhere you can find for us to learn from.
Right. So they have this semi superhero ability to divine information that you coming into it as a clean slate would have no idea. Like, where did you just kind of pull this artifact like out of the ether and bring it to the table, right? So I agree with you 100%. One of the biggest challenges that I've witnessed is asking someone to explain something that they've done before, right? And you learn really rapidly. I'm guessing you're kind of a bridge between what I would potentially consider at our tenure to be mid-tenure career at this point, and new tenure. When you're working with people, do you find that like you're having to explain how you learned how they pulled those artifacts out of the ether to people like, well, I learned it because of this. Like, is that something that you're finding yourself learning through teaching, or filling that gap by being that bridge between generations?
100%. I like to document things. So when I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I try to. So when I am given information from somebody, I like to kind of put it into a cohesive place and organize it so people coming in have the ability to go out there and to look at it and kind of, I didn't have that, so create it for other people so they don't have to struggle the way I struggled. Back when I started the internship, we Now it's called the Mainframe Academy. Back when I started, it was just the internship. There were two of us, and I think they gave us the 700-page red book to ZOS, and they said, "Hey, read this."
Hmm.
And that's what we did. So now we have labs, we have videos, we have interactive things that people have taken and created for ease of access and understanding that I didn't have. So there's people like me that have kind of been in it for a while, but not, we obviously don't have the expert knowledge as people that have been in the field for a long time do. But so we, yes, we do have to, we are a bridge in the gap. And people in my age group were not super common. The first conferences I went to, they were bringing me and parading me around as like the millennial mainframer, like a special. It's not so weird now seeing younger people there.
Yeah.
Younger people, like I'm not 30. But yes, so there is definitely a need to bridge the information that is out there, but maybe not stored where people can access it because it's in someone's brain,
Hmm.
to getting it to where it is ingestible.
You dropped a few gems on the table there for me that I'm going to try to pick up here. One that you said that really kind of resonated well with me was that you were willing to kind of be the person that's going to plant those seeds, knowing that you likely won't benefit from the tree that grows, right? That's the notion that you're willing to make that documentation. You're willing to do the tough work that it takes to say, this is the process, this is how it works, this is how it came about. And if you insert whomever is coming up behind you would like to learn it, I've created that process for you. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is kind of this vision I have in my head of Caroline walking through a hallway, seeing a sign, long before, Ensono had gotten a better marketing thing and saying the internship, come apply, right? So we're talking about this idea of a skills gap. We're talking about this being an impending issue or a critical problem potentially for businesses that aren't prepared for it. So how do we get more? How did that flyer that says the internship get someone like you interested to do this type of work?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was the flyer that did so. I mean, as a senior in college, internship was, a good way to pull anybody in. But once I got into it, I found that I enjoyed it, and there weren't many people that were my age doing it. So when you come into it and you see the gap, you're like, oh, okay, so there's this huge gap. Nobody else is learning it. So my job is fairly secure at this
Right.
point, because once everybody starts retiring and moving out of it, there has to be somebody to fill that space, and that would be me. So I think getting it out to people, getting it out to the young people specifically. I know that I was a senior in college when I found it, but I think especially people that are just coming into college or even below that, like late high school, being able to speak with them and let them know that this is an option, and it can be a career path because it's not something that's going to go away even if they say it's going to. And somebody's got to be here to carry it forward, and currently we are lacking in that. So I think there's a lot of initiative to get out more and to just put it in people's faces that this is an option.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the security is a huge part of why, right? We hear a lot, probably people saying, like, especially, as things become more and more uncertain over time, right? Having something where you're like, I'm the person that's holding the ball and I am supposed to pass this baton, and whether there's someone behind me or not is currently a coin toss, right? I think that sense of security, and for me, I'll speak personally, and you can tell me whether you agree or disagree with me. There's a sense of ownership to it, right? There's a sense of, I get to kind of shape this thing in a way that makes sense to me or means something to me. So I think for me personally, that the job security sentiment is a huge one that we need to keep kind of banging the drum and saying, yeah, job security is big for us. But also, you're helping shape that landscape. But what are we going to do as industry people to aid that upskilling process, right? So when you came into the industry, you said there was no manual. There was just a bunch of people passing anecdotes around and saying, well, this is how it gets done. Let's just put ourselves in the position of a business decision maker and say, how do I prepare that pipeline to get people ready? Like, does it require me to have army of Carolines ready to do what needs to be done? Or is there something that I can just manifest through some sheer effort right now to prepare a next generation of people for my environment of critical infrastructure?
So an army of Carolines is terrifying. Not something I advise, no clones of me. I don't think there's a magic wand that you can kind of wave and magically have something that'll train them up. I think definitely what's important is, and Ensono has it, is a mentor and mentee program where you can sign up to be one or the other, and you can be both if you want to. And getting that information out and helping other people is very important. If you've ever had to look anything up online for mainframes, it's usually a bunch of really, really angry people that are mad that anybody's asking about it because you should already know this. And
Right.
so having people that are willing to help and can pass along their knowledge is super duper important.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like I was actually having this conversation, believe this or not, this is how exciting my life can be sometimes, about developing talent and how we do this. And one of the artifacts that came out of that conversation was, if you don't have a pipeline already in place for creating this sort of talent, then you're already potentially running late, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
if you're saying, "Oh, we don't have a skills problem because we have three good capacity planners that are at the tail end of their career," and we would say, "Well, how many are behind them?" Like if you don't have any that are following like yourself, like it's potentially too late and you have a lot of work to do to play catch up. Would you say that that's something that you would agree with, right? Like
Yeah, 100%. It is an issue because the people that are leaving are the people that know everything, and it's not a you can train somebody in a year. It takes years for somebody to feel confident enough to go up against a client or to stand up and speak their own. Or if you're like me, I just talk, I'll just throw things out there and they'll tell me I'm wrong, and I'm like, ah, okay, cool, learning experience.
yeah.
But it takes a long time for somebody to feel confident enough to do that. And if you haven't already started and put that in place, you are behind the ball because it takes time. It's not like a job where you go in, there's like a 3 month probation period, and then bam, you're an expert at slicing meat.
Yeah.
I used to work in a deli, so it's different.
So you said something that really meant a lot to me because it reminded me of early in my career, right? You said, when I started, I knew nothing. I felt little confidence in speaking my opinion. And now today I can sit in front of a customer and I can authoritatively speak about what is going on in the environment. Was there anything that kind of flipped that switch for you, or was it just a gradual build of confidence, or how did you find your element that you're feeling like, yeah, I can speak up and I can be a contributor and make a lot of impact on the team or the customer or whatever the case might be?
Honestly, I was thrown into the fire, trial by fire. And one of the issues with the skills gap is that people that are retiring at these single companies, so they've been working for a company for 40 years or however long they've been there. And so now they're leaving. And so we have all of these companies that no longer have the skills to continue in-house. And so they're having to look for places like Ensono
Hmm.
for outsourcing. And
Yeah.
so I kind of got thrown into the mix. And because we have so many people that are losing their experts and coming to us, there's a lot going on.
Hmm.
And you see a lot more unique things happening. I know I was talking to somebody and they told me that the things that they've seen here just being in Sono for the past 9, 10 years, they never saw at a single company. And so you're bombarded with all these different angles of things. I think the time in which I could raise my hand and say, no, I know what I'm talking about. I got into not an argument, but a little bit of a spat with somebody because they were trying to explain to me how something worked. And I was like, no, I just finished a workshop on that and you were
Right.
wrong. Sorry, but let me talk. And I think that really came from just being out there and
Right.
being given clients that were low touch at first and then kind of moving you up to the higher level clients that may have a more complex structure going on. It really, for me, it was trial by fire. With more people, you can simulate more things because we know what you're going to run into. So you can kind of train them where they feel a little bit more confident going into it, so it doesn't take as long, but it still takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're basically saying that we want to build that necessary runway so that people have that time for growth, but also expose people to situations in a safe way such that, because situational awareness is how you handle, like you said, I was just in a workshop. I experienced this firsthand. This is why I know what you're saying is potentially not the truth, or whatever the case might be, right? You have to be in the seat to experience those situations to be able to speak authoritatively on it. You did mention something about a magic wand. You were saying there's no magic wand that you can wave to just create experience and knowledge transfer that's going to happen. I think a lot of people tend to believe that we're going to see the influence of advanced automation and artificial intelligence start to impact mainframe roles and responsibilities, say like capacity planning or systems programming or application development. Do you see automation and AI having an impact on, say, your role, an app dev role, or anybody like that? And what do you think that might look like?
I definitely see it having a an impact on my role and pretty much anybody. I'm capacity, so we can obviously use AI as a way to calculate things faster, because you can't, my brain will never work as fast as a machine until I become a cyborg, and that's a whole nother story. So I know people get scared when they hear AI. They get scared when they hear automation because they automatically think it's coming for my job. I'm going to be pushed out. I'm going to be replaced by a robot. I won't be anywhere. But especially with the way that AI works now, artists, there has been a big push against AI generated art because artists have taken the time and the skills to learn these things, and you then have an AI that's trying to emulate that, but it's not perfect. So you get 12 fingers on a hand, you get weird stuff going on in the background. So it's not like that. It is not a science. There's not a step by step. You do this, and you produce what you're looking for. There's kind of an art to it that I don't know if AI is going to be able to replicate
Right.
perfectly for sure. So I think instead of being worried that AI is going to take over, I feel like we need to look at ourselves as AI handlers.
Yeah,
We need
that's
to work
great.
with it and use it as a tool to do the tedious things that we used to spend a whole bunch of time on. So we can then look and do the things that need the actual art to it. Because I don't see it reaching that point in the near future. So I think it's going to be a tool. I don't think that we necessarily need to run around like our hair's on fire because they're coming for our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, so your stance is that it's a more augmentation to make you more efficient as the human, not a this is going to be cyborg Caroline and take over for me and I won't need to exist any further. Something that again had similar conversation earlier today, and I kind of want to bounce this idea off you before we close up, is just this idea, maybe you can relate to this, but when I started, and that was 15 years ago, right? Was Google was kind of the thing that when you need referential information, you go onto Google, how many, cups in a fluid ounce or whatever the case might be, right? You look that up and you get the information, right? I have used AI in that way. So large language models, chatbots, all of that, right? To say when I need some sort of referential information, my first go-to is shifted from being, I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to ask how many cups are in an ounce. And I'm going to say, how many cups are an ounce to Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever the case might be, right? And it's going to give me an authoritative response there. It sans a few hallucinations here or there. And that to me is a quicker way to have a conversation. And it's like now I'm having a contextual conversation, and now I know how many cups are in an ounce, but I don't know if I can is vegetable oil considered a neutral oil or whatever the case might be. So now we can keep having this conversation, and it's not completely discrete things. So I would say already affecting the way that I accomplish my tasks today, right? So as a systems programmer, what's the command for this? I can ask a chatbot that, and every once in a while it'll give me a fluid, coherent response to that. Are you seeing that affect you already today as kind of a reference thing that you're using, or not at all?
Yes. So I made my very first meme uh, not that long ago, and it was the grandma, being led by the younger person, and I was saying, back in my day, I wrote my own SAS code. And that's when I found out that people were using Chat GPT to write SAS. And I was like, duh, why didn't I think about that? I have wasted so much time sitting there and trying things when I could have asked this to give me a base. Because, yes, it does kind of make up some stuff sometimes. But using it as a base that can then be checked would have saved me a lot of time that I didn't even think to use it for. So I felt totally out of the loop when I found out other people were doing that. It definitely has become something more useful. There are people that record their presentations and then they ask AI, can you help me? Can you tell me what, I did that I could do better, where I was lacking, what I can do better? And it can give you pointers to say, before you go in front of this client, you need to clean this up. This could be phrased better this way. There are tons of applications, even on non-technical ways that AI can help.
So kind of further reinforcing this point that you have about it being an augmentation tool and saying like, yeah, contextualize what I'm trying to say, or make me less mean when I'm sending this angry email to somebody, right? That's a big one for me. It's like
That's per
I
my
am
last
just
email.
angrily writing something and I need this thing to temper me. Make me less mad right now, please. So we've touched on a lot of really fantastic topics today. I guess the final question that I have for you would be really kind of around this swirling idea of like the absolute value of a mainframe career for you. Would you say that, like, because we have this notion of this idea of a gold rush, right? There was a Maven report issue about the gold rush. They always say like when people are digging for gold, you want to be in the business of selling shovels, right? So when everyone's screaming that the mainframe is vacating or that, are you saying like be the person willing to swoop in? Would you say that that has worked for you? Kind of being the person that's going to be the next critical resource is what you want to be, or would you say that there's other alternatives out there?
So when I came into this, I didn't know that I was going to wind up being this bridge. Now that I'm here and bridging it along, there are things that I'm finding that we need to incorporate more because yes, I'm kind of in that like unicorny magic, not magic spot, but
That sweet spot, right?
yes, sweet spot. Yeah, I am in that sweet spot where I know quite a bit, but I don't know everything. So people leaving, it solidifies the fact that I can be here for a long time.
Mhm.
I could be the next person that's worked in this company for 40 years. I know people don't like hearing that. I'm old school. I'm like, I'm going to work for the shoe factory forever. So it definitely, it is becoming a hot commodity and we need to get people into it. And as we bring people in, especially people that are just fresh out of college and younger people, they have access to different technologies and they understand different technologies than I know, than the people that have been around forever know. And incorporating the new technologies into the mainframe space is going to wind up helping all of us, especially because there is that gap.
Absolutely. It's just that kind of that conveyor belt of adding fresh perspectives to the table and kind of innovating and changing at all times continuously. So thank you for being a part of this first episode. Is there, if the people want to get in touch with Caroline and learn more about you, is there anything that they can do? Is LinkedIn or anything? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Carrier pigeon. No, yes, LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm under Caroline Whitaker, and you can find me on there. Send me a message, and yeah, just you can reach out and find me there and hit me up.
Well, that's all the time we have to tackle this topic today. And I imagine that Caroline and I could keep going for quite a while longer. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things I want to just keep picking her brain on. So thank you again, Caroline, for lending your expertise to the topic today and for being such a fantastic guest in this series for the first time ever. I think the rest have some substantial shoes to fill here. I'd like to thank all of the listeners for joining us as we talk through this topic about mainframe talent. We'd love to hear more from you, what challenges you're facing, what's working for you, and what you'd like to hear more about by reaching out to us via email at hello@themavenreport.com. And as we close out, we look forward to hosting you all as we continue this series on critical mainframe topics. And I'd love to encourage you to check out the mavenreport.com for more expert IT insights and advice to drive your digital transformation. Thanks for joining us on the Maven Cast.
Thanks for listening to Maven Cast. For more Maven content, including articles, interviews, and videos, visit themavenreport.com.